Welcome back to Between Sessions. My name is Eboni Harris.
And I'm Elisa Bokeen. And we are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch. I don't know why I get so excited every time.
I'm glad you do. You wrote my energy because I'm like, both sides.
Because I mean, what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
We're changing the face of therapy.
We are. And I'm excited about this idea that you came up with today because we talk about it a lot on other shows.
Oh, I was like, what idea did I come up with?
The topic for today.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
Hey, welcome back to our circus.
Yeah.
Hope everybody is doing well. And we really appreciated all of the feedback and comments from last week's episode where it was just me and Elisa.
Yes.
Everybody seemed to like the discussion about private practice. Hey, if you get a chance and you have any questions about private practice, anything that you feel like you didn't learn in school or something like that, like send us a message. You can DM us or send it to our email address because we're trying to come up with ideas on how to help you guys when it comes to private practice.
DM us.
DM us, not email.
It's easier. No. But DM us on Instagram. Not on Facebook. Or drop it in the comments.
Let us know what you want to know about private practice. What has been your struggle? What makes you decide not to go to private practice or to go into private practice, things like that, because we're trying to figure out. It seems like people really enjoy those conversations because we don't get to have them too often.
Well, because I think, when we're in grad school, there's a lot of times there's this conversation about being in private practice and some of the professors have their own private practice and you hear about all this, but then I won't say most because I haven't done the research.
Some.
We don't always get the training in school to necessarily set up the private practice, which is what we were talking about last week.
Right. And so, like you said, with either if you have a business degree or something like that, I was lucky enough that my supervisor was all about private practice. Mm-hmm. So from the time I was in practicum, it was setting me up to do private practice, but we get that everybody doesn't have that training. Right. So
yeah, my undergrad was in marketing, and then was self-employed for many, many years. Before that. So I was fortunate to have that background.
Right, exactly.
But not everybody does.
Not everybody does.
And like we said, it's not Field of Dreams. Mm-hmm. We are not Kim and Costner.
Yeah. And we want to encourage, like we said, we're trying to change the face of therapy on both sides of the couch. So how do we encourage more clinicians of color to dip their toe in to private practice so that people can see clinicians that actually look like you? So,
and I think you and I have also a different, I don't know if I said different perspective, but we're cash only.
Yeah.
That's the other piece.
Right.
And that,
we love the people that take insurance.
We need people to take insurance.
Yes.
I just don't.
Just not.
I just, and that's my own from being in the medical equipment company field before and dealing with insurance and all that. So I was like, I don't want to deal with insurance, third party, and so there's an extra bit of work that you need to do when you are just going it alone.
Right. Okay, so we'll make sure to address some of the questions as well as, like I said, we're trying to figure out how can we help as many people as possible when it comes to like trying out private practices and if it's for them.
We already got some questions on IG. Yes, we're going to save this live so you can view it again. And then would you recommend a marketing background for private practice? My background is in marketing. Mm-hmm. And I think that having that background is important, certainly for private practice. And if it's not your background, any business, if it's not your background, having somebody that you can go to is going to be important.
And then even with that, it's not about necessarily getting a bachelor's degree or anything like that, just getting education on it.
Right.
So taking courses online. There are always options for you to learn more about that particular area, but marketing is a huge part.
We have one that you led, webinar that if you go to melaninmentalhealth.com in the store, it was the
dope therapist, entrepreneur, something.
Private practice, be dope, get your
Yeah. So that's kind of like a general overview, but we're trying to like figure out how to give you guys like more
detail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as far as the It's always at Melanin and Mental Health. You can go, we're about a week ahead. So like Monday, we'll post the one, this upcoming Monday, we'll post the one from last week about private practice. So just head over to Melanin and Mental Health and you can see all the podcasts that we do there, the videos and the audio. So that is always available.
Excellent. I'm having so much fun reading everybody's questions.
All right, well, let's get into the topic of today. Today we're talking about different forms of healing. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. I keep wanting to say minority mental health. It's Mental Health Awareness Month this month. And so, of course, we're big proponents of therapy and going to therapy and seeking out a therapist. But as we talk about a lot on this show, we discuss other forms of healing and respect and recognize that therapy does not work for everyone, or therapy in conjunction with other things may be more of a better suit for you.
Right. So therapy is not always the end all be all.
Right. And sometimes it takes, I need to get over some other stuff or deal with it in these other ways before I move into therapy.
Or even having it, like you said, in addition to other work that you're doing, because we're multifaceted, layered individuals. And you can, I've had amazing therapists in the past, and yet there were still other parts of me that also needed to be able to have outlets and support in different ways.
Right.
So I'm excited for us to talk about all these different ways.
And I think it's important. Not that all therapists are like this, but I know we talk a lot about having a team of different people that you can refer to, just making sure that it's more collaborative where it's okay for you to seek out these options. Just because you're coming to see me for therapy doesn't mean you don't need to do chakra healing, doesn't mean you don't need to go see a psychiatrist. There are so many different options, and it's okay to kind of seek out those things and kind of build your own healing team.
Why do you think our field is as hesitant, so to speak, to incorporate maybe some other forms of healing? Because, our field can be pretty traditional in the way that it approaches how to tend to people's mental health. Why do you think it is sometimes as conservative?
I think a few things. I think one, because this is something that we talked about a lot in my master's program, one is protecting the licenses, right? So when it comes to life coaches, relationship coaches, other yoga, things like that, it's kind of like, or other fields that are very similar, consulting and all that kind of stuff that can feel very similar to therapy. It's kind of like we need to protect the license, right? When in school, we did all the work to get testing and all that kind of stuff. And so then it's hard and not really understanding what the differences are and not being sure that other people understand what the differences are, right? And so I think a big part of it is protecting, okay, we've done this, we've got this research background, and all this other stuff. And then, as a life coach, there are different options. You can get certified, all that kind of stuff, but it's not regulated. And so I think that sometimes we are so concerned that these people, which goes into that abundance scarcity mindset,
that's exactly what I'm
but that fear of okay, if we don't protect our license, then these people are going to take over and we won't be able to practice the way we want to practice.
Which is problematic on some level, right? Because on one level, yes, I totally believe we want to protect our clients, and we want to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. Our field is really big on, empirically supported practices. So all of that is done with the intention of protecting our clients, which is fantastic, right? We're not opposed to that. I do think sometimes what I've noticed within our field, just within conversations and such of other therapists, is it can give people a complex. We're the only ones that can support or help people's growth, or you need to come to me. And that's where I think it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
The idea that we're the only ones that can help people through certain challenges.
Issues, right. Yeah. And it feels very competition.
Yes.
It's a lot of competition instead of these are different options for you. And even as a therapist, being educated on those different options. Because I was definitely a person that was life coaching until I met life coaches and I would talk to them, and really good life coaches understand where their boundaries are. Yeah. They understand that this is what I'm helping you with. Right. And if it goes past this, or if you have other issues or traumas or anything like that, then I will refer you to a therapist. Right. And so I think in my head, because I didn't know, all I knew was when I was in grad school, and it was like when I was getting my first master's degree, and I almost didn't graduate with that degree. I was like, I'm just gonna become a life coach because that's all I know about. It's like you just decide you'll be a life coach. But then as I started networking, as I started meeting new people, I was like, oh, people that take it seriously and people that I would refer to for life coaching and business coaching, all that kind of stuff, they take a completely different approach than what I thought it was.
Yeah. And I think the same can be said for a therapist, that there are some therapists who don't do their work.
Definitely.
Even if we are regulated, even if, our licenses are at risk, I think it depends on the individual, because some therapists don't know where their limits are or their boundaries. Right. So I really think as a client, as a consumer of healing, I think we have to do our due diligence with whoever you're going to, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a life coach, a spiritual healer, energetic healer, whatever. Like, do your due diligence in asking people about where did they get their training, what's their approach to healing, how long have they been doing this, what did they need to do in order to be able to do what they do, what are their limits, ask about that.
Right. And also probably it depends on what you're looking for, right? We talked about marketing earlier as far as private practice, and some people are really good at marketing, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skills to help you with what you specifically need. So there may be a therapist that you see all the time across social media, always posting things like that. So you're like, okay, this is the person I'm going to go to. But then once you reach out to them, once you start kind of working with them, you realize like, okay, their skills don't match what I do.
Right. Or you just don't vibe with them.
Or you just don't vibe with them. That's extremely important. So it's okay to like kind of check it out and see if it's a good fit. And it may not be just because this person is like the popular therapist or the person that you see all the time does not mean that, one, they're a good therapist in general, like you don't know, but two, that's a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people just are really good at selling themselves.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. But you just have to be honest and understand what you need as far as when you're seeking out some type of mental health.
Right.
So what have been, because I know you've done a lot.
I'm like all about
this is experimental.
When someone says, so there's this form of healing, I'm like, oh, like I'm such a healing junkie. Like, I'll do it. Put me under. Yes. Let me try this. I just love it because, there are so many gifted healers out there also. People, and I think that's one thing, like for us to define. When I say healer, for you to also keep in mind, when you go to somebody and they say they're a healer, we're not healing anybody. Even therapists are not healing anybody. We're simply part of your healing process. We're part of your healing process. So I always caveat people, whether it be a therapist, whether it be, whatever, a yoga instructor, whoever, when people have that guru complex, like, beware. Right.
If they have all the answers.
If they have all the answers, if they have this, I am, the therapist, or I am the healer, like that's usually a red flag.
Yeah.
That's usually a red flag, because a lot of times what can happen is there's a lot of ego tied into that particular process that is not necessarily client-centered.
Right.
How did I get into that?
We were talking about different forms of healing, but I think that's a good point, because even in, we've both done some training outside of just normal therapy training, and I feel like that was part of my struggle with my training, which I had disrespectful. Yeah, I need to decide if I'm going to continue with that or not, or whatever. But it was kind of that mindset of like, well, this doesn't work and this doesn't work. This is the only thing that works. It's like, you need to come and see us. And so while I still believe in the training and things like that, it kind of turned me off, because I know that different people need different things.
Absolutely.
And so this one thing won't necessarily work for everyone.
No. And I think, again, as clients, as healing consumers, we have to be able to explore those different options, because at different points. So I've talked about before, I'm not just a therapist, I'm a client, and I love therapy and have done it on and off for years. And there was a point in time where maybe a certain type of therapist or a certain type of therapy was what I needed. And then, there was a time, I think when I first started therapy, I really wanted the therapist that was very direct. Like, this is what you need to do. Da, 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 da. And then as I was healing, then I was like, oh, like I don't need somebody that to do that anymore. So I loved my therapist and had benefited so much working with her. And I was like, oh, wow, like it's time for me to try something different. Right. And then as I was going through my process and really exploring my own beliefs and spiritual beliefs and all that, I found I needed to be able to incorporate more of my spirituality or my spiritual beliefs into my healing process, getting into this energetic world and, what does all this mean, and energy and chakras and which is all resonating with me, and trying to find other avenues to explore. And that's the thing that's so cool about this is as you start exploring and seeking and finding new ways of healing, like there's another layer that will unfold, and there's another layer that will unfold, and you'll find like there's so many people out there doing such beautiful work that for us as mental health professionals to think that this is the only way, or that someone else couldn't complement the work that we're doing with our clients is really, I think, ego-centered versus client-centered.
Right. And even, I can't remember 100%, but I believe it's with the Texas LMFT is at least, like you can have different types of therapists. Like it's okay as long as everybody's aware. Right. So I know I work with couples a lot. And so, yes, I'm going to refer for individual therapy as well as couples therapy. If there's something specific that I can't help with, then I'm going to refer out. And so there's nothing wrong with like having these different people to, like I said, kind of be on that healing team.
Right. To have a healing squad.
Yes. So what you do chakra healing. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with that and what made you decide to kind of move into that?
Yeah. So it was, again, I've done therapy on and off for many years. And then as I was exploring also this energetic healing and started learning about crystals and Reiki and all this stuff, I'm like, this is cool. This is shiny and pretty. I want to learn more about it. And then discovered somebody who was combining the psychotherapy with the energy psychology, with the energy healing. And it was something that for me really opened up parts. How can I explain this in a way that's more concrete instead of this woo-woo? I began to notice that patterns that maybe I'd been stuck in for many years and had done therapy, suddenly I wasn't stuck in those patterns anymore. I had a different level of clarity. And is that because I was able to incorporate more of what I needed into my therapy, into my healing? Maybe. There is something to be said for energy psychology. We've all experienced that. If you've walked into a room and you feel the vibe of the room, or you meet someone and you're like, I'm just not feeling their vibe, or I am feeling their vibe, our bodies pick up on this stuff. Right. And so because of the experience that I had in the shift that I was able to make in my own personal life, I was like, I need to learn how to do this. I need to learn how to be able to offer this to my clients if this is also something that they would benefit or that it would resonate with them. So I did it's a 3-year program, really. It's 2 years of training and then a year of like post-grad stuff. But it was very much about this being able to integrate and have a more holistic approach to healing. Right.
So just being able to, you kind of understood yourself and the interest that you started to develop. Yeah. And so there was something that fit that also was helpful.
Which was so cool.
Right.
Like, wait, what?
Right.
And I think what we talk about as therapists, what we talk about all the time is how can we be more fully authentic with the work that we do.
Right.
And the more authentically we can show up for our clients, granted, like we've said before, that doesn't mean this is authentically me, so I'm here in my PJs.
Right.
But are there other ways or other resources that I can offer them to be part of their healing process.
Yeah. And I think that goes with doing your own healing, right?
Yes.
As you grow, as you change, the way you thought when you first started practicing may it be completely different.
Absolutely.
After 5, 10, 2, however long years. As you go through your own healing, as you start to explore the world and learn more and open yourself up to different things, then yeah, you want to incorporate it more within your clients, or you want to be able to refer to someone that does this type of work. So I think that sometimes we get so stuck in like therapy is the way, because we haven't experienced the benefit of all these other things, right? Like I know even the simplest thing of like I started this morning routine. When I restarted because I taken a break. But this morning routine, and as I see the benefits, it's like anything else. Once you start learning the benefits, you want to tell everybody, right? You want everybody to understand, like, no, but if you do this every day, imagine like what your life could be, right? This is how it impacted me, and so I can see how it impacts you.
That's so true. You know, that's why I think it is so important for therapists to do their own healing, right? Because we have to address these issues to be able. I really see us as this instrument, right? Like we're this instrument that is being used as part of our client's process. And the more clear your instrument, right? Because you've done your work, because you're doing your ongoing work, because you are building your own self-awareness as a therapist, your clients benefit from that. They benefit from that. So I think investing in our own healing is so important. And it also reminds us what it's like to be on that other end, like to be on the couch.
Right.
You know?
Right. To be the person receiving whatever you
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of the other types of healing. So we talked a bit about coaching, the chakra healing. I'm thinking about just incorporating. I know we had, I can't think of a name, but incorporating like movement and exercise
absolutely
into it. Like I know you have a friend that does yoga and trauma-informed yoga.
Yes, Elizabeth Aberrera. She's here in Houston, and she is amazing at what she does. She is very skilled in treating trauma, and she's also a yoga instructor.
Yes,
she's also a yoga instructor, and so she's been able to develop this program and does it to where, you know, so much of what trauma is, it gets stuck in our bodies. And I don't know, I've experienced this myself in a yoga class where there's different postures, different poses that really help to open up and release some of this trauma, release some emotions. Because I had experience like that one time in a class. It was so funny to me. I was like, oh, this is why people cry in yoga. It was one particular pose that the instructor had done. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not even going to try that because like, that's just not going to happen. And I was trying it. I think it was like the wheelbarrow or whatever it's called. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then the instructor was like, does anybody need help? Blah, blah. She comes around and I was like, yeah, let me just have her help me. And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, just open your hands out a little wider, make some space, and push up again. And I did it, and I was like, like I started crying. Like I had just the feeling, and I had this moment, and I felt like it was such a metaphor for life, like creating a little more space, just kind of like, and like push through. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. Something that just not even 2 minutes ahead of time, I was like, I can't do that shit. I was like, there's no way. And then someone comes and says, do this little adjustment. And I just, I just started crying. And so that's another example of like, in that moment, like this little nugget of time, I was like, wait, I can do hard things.
I can get through things that I didn't think I could before.
Yes. So the trauma-informed yoga is also with the idea that people who have suffered trauma, you know, it's very difficult sometimes to ask them like, well, talk about your trauma. Like that's not how it works. And there's a part of our brain that gets shut down by it. But with the yoga and certain poses, it can help to release some of that without having to speak. So, yeah, hypnosis.
Yes.
Hypnotherapy.
Hypnotherapy is another way. And actually, what I am getting trained in is a form of hypnotherapy that is supposed to be a little bit faster. But I had never even had any experience with hypnotherapy outside of like when I was in school and they were like, oh, you hypnotize easily. And I was like, oh, okay.
I've had it done.
Right. And I know that's like, she was one of the people I got to practice on and all of that. So you've done hypnotherapy.
I've done, so another dear, I have all these friends who do like all this like amazing stuff. So I really do. I'm like, I have a friend who does. So my friend, she's here in town too, Houston, Michelle Dahl West, who is a hypnotherapist and also doing like this work like on intergenerational trauma and how it gets passed down. So tell people though a little bit who maybe they don't know what hypnosis is. Can you, because it's not like you're getting sleepy.
Hypnosis is not a matter of like you are completely out of control of your body. I don't know what's happening. I just wake up and all of a sudden heal.
Yeah.
It's really just a form of like deep relaxation.
Deep meditative
state where you're still in control. And that's I think that's what scares people the most about it. And I get it because I felt the same way. Yeah. It's just like, oh no, I don't want to do anything stupid in front of somebody else or whatever. It's that need for control. Right. What are you gonna make me do? It's not like the shows that you might see in Vegas or anything like that. It truly, as when I'm talking about hypnotherapy, not hypnosis. Those are two. So hypnotherapy is a deep form of relaxation, meditation that gets you in a space where you can kind of get in touch with your subconscious mind. And it brings up things that maybe you're not aware of or things that you just brings up things so that you can kind of process a little bit different than what you would when your conscious mind is trying to talk about it and things like that. So I know what I was training in, it was very much about kind of going back into the memories in our childhood and those things that kind of led to whatever struggles we have, and dealing with that at that point, like when it first formed, as opposed to trying to process it all right now. As I'm really like, okay, when I get back to the training, I really want to use it for clients that are kind of stuck, where like they've made some progress in talk therapy, but the therapist or the client recognizes like we're not moving anywhere. Like there's something blocking that person from being able to move past it. And so then they could come and do hypnotherapy. It's called rapid transformational therapy, and kind of get that block removed in a couple sessions, and they go back to therapy, and now they can kind of move forward in their progress. So yeah, I think that a lot of people, when you think of therapy, is very much about the show and like you're gonna make me do things and stuff like that. But it's not anything like that. Like it's really just about you kind of letting go of a little bit of your control and letting your subconscious mind come to the forefront and help you kind of understand what's happening and what's happening within your life and previous lives.
You know, I think part of what we've lost, I think, in our communities and with this work, it's kind of like what Dr. Manuel has talked about before, right? Like, and if y'all don't know Dr. Manuel, we quote him all the time. He's in Austin, Dr. Manuel Samariba. He said at one time that we were like, yes, where he said, you know, therapy is ours. And this idea that our communities have always gathered and sought out counsel, sat in these healing ways. You know, that's something that we've done, that our ancestors did, that we've done for years and years and years. And I think that's the other part of this that has resonated with me, like in my own healing process, in my own growth as a therapist, and tapping into my own roots, is this is a lot of these new forms of healing. They're not new. They're ancient ways of forms of healing that our ancestors did, right? That they relied on before you went and you sat on the couch. Right. And so I don't think that we give enough credit and respect to these ancient forms of healing that that are really part of us, that are part of our DNA.
Right. And I think that's why sometimes when you do open yourself up to that, why it tends to resonate a little bit more, because it feels familiar, right? Even though we don't recognize it as familiar, there is, when we talk about traditional therapy or talk therapy as it is today, that's why a lot of times we feel disconnected from it.
Right.
Because like we said before, it wasn't necessarily made for minority communities at all. And so we're trying to kind of fit in, as opposed to like understanding that we have all these forms of healing that we've had for generations and generations that we can incorporate and we can work with, that may feel a little bit more comforting and familiar than just going to talk therapy.
Right. And I think that really help us to feel connected, like to feel more connected to our, like to nature, to our ancestors, just to something, to our community, just to something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And we've said this before, healing is about connection.
Right.
And so there's different forms of connection. And so I think it's important for us within the to recognize that and respect that, and to make space for that as well. Especially like when our clients are showing up and maybe they have these additional needs, or maybe they share with us, you know, like if someone comes to me and they talk about, you know, my clients know, like if they come to me and they're like, I don't know if you know, like about astrology, or they're like, yeah, is that part of you? Like bring it in.
Talk about it,
you know, or if they come to me like about crystals or chakra healing, yes, like let's talk about it, you know, and maybe they talk to me about something, I mentioned something one day and I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna look into that, you know, but I think we have to create that space within the therapy room and be curious versus judgmental or skeptical right away.
Right. And allowing people to bring their whole self authentically to therapy. And if you don't know, learn. Right. It's not up to them to teach, which that goes into the cultural part of it as well. But it's not up to that person to have to teach you everything. Like you said, they mentioned it to you. Oh, I haven't heard of it. And I'm going to do my due diligence and research and learn. Or, I mean, and it's funny because I remember, I feel like the answer used to be refer out. But it's coming to a space where, like, especially for us as minority clinicians, there aren't a million of us. Like we have, there are a lot, but there's not enough. And so when clients come to you, and just because this isn't your background, or even like you're not necessarily interested in crystals and things like that, allow them to come as their authentic self, and then do your due diligence so you can help them in that path that they're on.
Find out how it helps them.
Right, exactly. You don't have to necessarily go into it. It might be helpful if you did, but find out how it helps and continue to help them in that, if that's the path they chose, as opposed to just being like, oh no, that doesn't work for me. Let's move on. Right. And it's the same thing as like I don't consider myself a Christian counselor at all, but I have clients that religion is a very important part of the thing for them. So then I make sure I'm going to be able to talk to them in certain terms and identify with them in that when they show me that is what's important to them. I'm not just going to be like, oh no, I'm not a Christian counselor. We don't talk about Jesus, right? Right. No, we can't talk about Jesus. What are you talking about? Let's talk about you.
Right.
So you have to recognize it.
I think our communities are hungry for it too. I think our community, you know, I've seen it more and more in that searching, like the search for healing. You know, I think that's part of why we've seen such a shift in how we talk about mental health, and you see more people talking about mental health, and more people are able to talk about it and talk about going to therapy and all that, which I think is wonderful. But I think that is because people are hungry for healing. Like there's so much crap, you know, that has gone on for years, but especially these last years, I would say, I think have been in overdrive as far as what our communities are dealing with. And not there's been more, but it's more highlighted. Right. We have more access to seeing it on an even deeper level. And I think it's not just us seeing it, because we've always seen it, but now that we know that others are seeing it and things are not necessarily shifting the way that we want to, like, shouldn't you be concerned about this as well? I think that is just really adding to our desire to heal and to heal within our communities and in ways that resonate with us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as we continue the conversation about mental wellness, mental health, just understanding that while yes, we can deal with a lot, we don't have to.
We don't have
How to move past that thought process of like, oh, we just pack it on. I think that goes along with that, right? Like, I think the first step was, it is like, okay, therapy, right? Because that's the one that's most out there. But then as you kind of went through that process, kind of like, well, what else is out there, right? If you see the benefits of therapy, what else can I do to incorporate in my life? And if you have a therapist that is open, then they're going to start asking you, what do you meditate, right? What about gratitude? All those things that are more, exactly, mindfulness is a huge thing. All those things that may seem a little bit like, okay, that's outside of the realm of therapy, but those are all things that help us deal and cope with life and help us kind of get more present in the moment, right? Which is a lot of what mental health is all about. It's like not being so caught in the past and the future, but like what's happening right now and what can I control right now?
Absolutely.
So I think that as you go to therapy and as therapists are introducing those things, then you do become more curious about these other practices and these other things. Yeah. I want to talk just a little bit about retreats because like I know this, if anybody follows like my leak or anybody that's like that was there, you saw all the pictures from the my Tachi retreat this weekend. And I know you've done retreats with the Woman's Earth, and we're going to be doing one.
We're doing one in December. There's a few spaces, I think.
I think it's like 3 spots available if you want to go to this retreat.
Yes, the Women's Earth Base in December.
Yes, and so how do retreats fit into that healing space?
I think, and specifically with the Women's Earth retreats that I've been blessed enough to be able to be a facilitator for 2 of them, is that I think it can be the springboard for a lot of people. Like, let's say they've never done therapy or what have you. Like, you're usually going there because you want on some level to get some new information to help you grow. So retreats like the Women's Earth, what I've witnessed is that you start to, one, see that, oh, wow, maybe I'm not the only one who's dealing with this, right? So it's like, oh, so this is really a thing, that I'm not the only one dealing with this, so when that happened, that was actually something that shouldn't have happened. There was maybe a violation towards me, but it's very healing also being in this community where the intention has been set for healing, for growth, for connection. Those are all the elements of healing. And then fun, having a good time as well. But I think for a lot of people, a retreat can be something where the focus is primarily just on you, on your healing, on you having a good time.
On the support that you get from the other people there. Because I feel like that's a big part of
that's
it.
Huge. Yeah. Like there's real there's real bonds that can form as a result of that because you're going through this process together.
Right. So I know we talked about it a lot, and so I was just wanting to add that as like another option as far as retreats or group therapy or things like that when you have that type of support. And this space that's all about healing.
Absolutely.
Right, for an extended period of time. And even like couples retreats and things like that, right? Like where you get
it's like an intensive.
Exactly. This is all dedicated to us growing and healing in this space. And it's for more than an hour or 2 hours a week. It's like I get this 48 hours focused on my healing, or however long we're going to be there, 5 days.
We're going to be there 5 days. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
And then healing on the ocean, because the ocean, that's my thing. So being near the water and yes, so retreats are a beautiful way to connect with others and just go deeper and in a more intensive way within a short amount of time.
Right. So I think that's it. I mean, and we've had a lot of conversations. I mean, we have a lot more that we can talk about, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up.
Yes. And so this month, with it being not self-care awareness month.
Mental health awareness month.
We need to start a self-care awareness month.
I think there is one. Actually, we should know that. Mental health awareness month.
Yes. We have a giveaway that we're doing right now. We have partnered up with ThriveWise, and if you go to our Instagram, what we're doing is we've partnered up with ThriveWise, and they are giving away 3 carefully specialized, bundled self-care boxes. And so all you have to do, if you go over there, you're going to follow us, you're going to follow them, you're going to post a picture of your favorite form of self-care. And 3 people are going to win one of these self-care boxes. You're going to get a consultation so that they can customize this self-care box for you. And you'll get some a self-care, it doesn't have to be a self-care one, but you're going to get a Melanin mental health t-shirt also of your choice. So that's going to be fun. We're going to give that away. It will be randomly selected at the end of the month. So if you head over to Instagram, look at the post, follow us, follow them, and post a picture. Because we need some ideas on other forms of self-care. Right. Like I'm always looking, like I said, healing. Give me all the ideas.
She'll try anything.
Almost anything. A lot of things. I'll try a lot of things, right? Give us some ideas. We want to know. We'll repost it in our Instagram stories as well. So that's this month. And then what else? Oh, what else?
Merchandise. We have like 20% off coupon code for, I keep wanting to say minority mental health. Mental Health Awareness Month. And so the code is mental health.
Mental health. So if you head over to melaninmentalhealth.com, click on the shop button. And so you've seen the merchandise, the cups.
And we also have new merchandise up there. So check it out. Black Therapists Exist.
Latinx
Respect My Boundaries is my favorite shirt.
Yeah, I love that one.
I do love that shirt.
Self-care is sexy.
Self-care is sexy.
Woke therapist. There's a lot of merchandise. Go over to there, get 20% off for celebrating Minority
Mental Health Awareness Month. Yes, all of that with melanin and mental health.
Yes.
I guess that's it. Oh, I have a masterclass.
When is it?
May 24th. You can head over. You can go to Room for Relations Instagram if you want to go ahead. It's kind of like the pre-sale. It's not really on sale right now. But if you just want to stay informed and get more information about it, I'm going to start like pushing it a lot next week. You go to roomforrelations.com and sign up for the email list. And if you sign up for the email list, you get like the 5 days of becoming sexually free.
Set the people.
And the masterclass. Sexually free. And the masterclass is all about getting the sex that you want. So check out Room for Relations if you are interested in joining that masterclass.
I love it.
All right, that's all we have.
Wait, why don't you look at some of the questions?
Okay.
On Facebook? I'll look at the ones over here. What are people saying? Do they have questions or are they just telling us how much they love
They just said it's great. 100%. As a therapist, I had to go off and go deeper with other modalities. Oh yes, a license does not mean you are going to have boundaries or ethics. Look. Love the discussion. What trainings have you been in that was not therapy? Chakra healing isn't technically therapy, is it?
It's not therapy, but it's combined, and it had a mental health component to it because the woman that trained me and who trained her, the woman who trained her was a psychiatrist, and then the woman who trained me is also a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, supervisor, 30 years plus of experience in the mental health field. So even though it wasn't necessarily a therapy training, there was a strong part of the training was bringing in the mental health, like, you know, what people are not appropriate for this type of healing, what diagnoses, that sort of thing. So there was a strong mental health component as part of my training. Yeah. But that's not therapy training, like maybe like some sort of like physical form or like with hypnosis. Well,
hypnotherapy is not therapy the way we talk about therapy. So it was definitely a struggle for me being in it, kind of like what I said, where it was kind of like knock against therapy, which, as a therapist in this training, it was like, wait. So they definitely try to separate themselves, although it's called hypnotherapy, from like a therapist or a psychiatrist, things like that. But it's a lot of similar concepts. It's a lot of, working through trauma, helping people overcome childhood traumas, childhood incidents that may have led to whatever they're dealing with at this point. So it's a lot of similarities. It's just a lot more focused.
Yeah.
So it's very much Nope, I got it. It's very much about like going directly to the source and getting them out of it as quickly as possible. That training was, I don't know how other hypnotherapy trainings are, but that one was very much like no more than like 2 sessions and they'll be like good to go. I have my hesitations about it, but I always plan to incorporate it with my therapy practice. So it was never going to be like, I'm only doing this part, because as a therapist, as a trained therapist, I could see where there are some limitations in the way that they were doing it. So I always wanted to kind of incorporate it. So yeah, it definitely, because you can do it without being honest or anything like that. Yeah. So
yeah. So
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
All right. This is my first time watching. Thank you for joining us. Love the dialogue. Thank you guys so much. And like we said, if y'all have questions or just things that you wish you had known about private practice, make sure you send us a DM so we can kind of keep track of those. And we're going to figure out how to dispense information so we can get more people interested in that part of mental health. And make sure you follow us on our social media at Melanin and Mental Health, Melanin Health on Twitter. And go to Melanin and Mental Health to check out all the old podcasts, buy merchandise, and to find a dope therapist. If you are a dope therapist, go sign up for the directory. And we will talk to you guys soon.
Oh, wait, we didn't talk about the happy hour, May 17th. To be determined where we're going to have it.
Yes.
But May 17th, if you're in Houston, or if you just want to
come to Houston.
Come to Houston. Meet us.
Yeah. We'll be there.
May 17th.
And we will post where we're going to be. Yes.